Welcome into Sportsmemo's betting podcast for college basketball. We're looking at Saturday's slate. We'll also do one Friday night game to start us off with our expert handicapper, Robbie Vino, on a 70% run his last 20 plays, 14-6 on the basketball court. Robbie, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am doing great, Drew. How about yourself?
Hey, I'm doing good. We're both hot, man. We're both seeing it well, so don't want to say anything to jinx us. Just kind of say what we're doing here. You're on a 14-6 run, seeing it good, and hopefully we can get the listeners on the right side of some of these games, huh, Robbie?
That's always the intent, Drew, and just so that you don't jinx yourself, I'll let the audience know that it's a 14-2 run, guys. Drew Martin. At Drew Martin Bets on Twitter, but Drew's on a 14-2 run, 5%, a couple of 5% winners this week. So talk about seeing it well, 88%. I don't know how much better you can see it than that. So I know, Drew, over the course of this weekend, you'll probably have another big play going. So guys, ladies, everybody out there listening, you want to check out what Drew's got going, because 14-2, 88%, that's no joke. A real hot streak right here now. And I noticed yesterday on Twitter that it's not just us, Drew. It's the entire crew. So everybody's seeing it pretty well right now. Let's, look to continue that for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Well said. A lot of guys heating up right now. So sportsmemo.com is a great place to check it out, especially for Saturday's college basketball. We got one Friday night game wanted to hit on. We got My Parlay Ticket on Twitter shouting us out, asking us to hit it. So we'll hit it for him. Thanks for responding, buddy. And we got 869-870 St. Peter's Iona. Small schools here, 138.5 the total. Iona, 8.5 at home, Robbie. How would you look to bet this one?
Yeah, it's interesting because Iona, normally the class or, one of the two teams that are the class of this conference almost annually, not really there this year. Iona sunk to near the bottom of the standings here. St. Peter's is the team that sits in sole possession of last place inside this conference. But I found it interesting, Drew, when I was handicapping this game this morning that, even though we're in mid-February, these teams have not played thus far this season. And that's kind of an anomaly when you look at these smaller conferences that open their conference tournaments, earlier than the Power Fives do. So you would expect to see a second time around here. We don't see it. So first look for each team at one another. It's always a clash difference here as far as tempo is concerned between these two. Iona for years, a little bit more up-tempo. One of the top tempo teams in that conference. St. Pete, always a possession, pedestrian type of team, hangs their hat on the defensive end. The problem for Iona this year is they just don't have the shooters that they've had in the past. Now, they come off a big win the other night, and it's a little tough to gauge whether or not that win becomes a buy signal on Iona or whether or not that win was just – this is a very spotty conference for anybody who follows it. And especially if you were to look at my power ratings of this conference, you would see what a log jam it is from top to bottom. It's just a conference where anybody could win on any given night. I don't know that Iona deserves to be an 8.5-point favorite in this game at home. I'm not so sure they can, even if they are able to dictate tempo. Let's put it this way. Even if they are able to dictate tempo, I'm not sure that they're able to shoot well enough to separate from St. Pete in what would have to be basically a double-digit style win. You could get away with a 9-point win, of course, and still cover here, but most likely you're looking at a double-digit win. And I think St. Peter's, can slow this game down well enough to keep this one close. Now, my power ratings made this game Iona 7.5. Their guard play, like I say again, Drew, just isn't what it's been in the past. So to me, they're not trustable. If I had to play the game, which I did not, I would probably look to take the points with St. Pete. Everybody's scrambling at this point in time for positioning in the conference tournament. And for St. Pete, it would be nice for them to be able to grab that 7th win inside the league and climb out of that. Get their 7th win of the season and climb out of the bottom of the standings. So I would look towards St. Pete plus the price. Like I say, if Iona was efficient offensively like they have been in years past, I would have had a buy signal on them after the win the other night, but I'm just not so sure they don't revert right back to what they'd been doing before this. So for me, it would be St. Pete plus the points or no play at all.
And Robbie, you're talking about the conference, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, the MAC with an extra A in the middle, and mostly there in the Northeast. And, Iona is not a good team by any means. They do run up tempo, and so I normally come at these type of games from a total standpoint. St. Peter's, one of the slower teams in all the country. The Peacocks, by the way, St. Peter's Peacocks. They're on the road, and they're the less talented team, as far as power ratings go. So you'd think Iona would control pace, being a top, 35 team in terms of tempo. So that would make me look towards the over, but just two bad teams, two, sub 250 teams in the country. I almost never bet those type of teams over, just because I feel like it's bad teams are correlated with under, because in the sport of college basketball, it's just tough to put the ball in the basket sometimes. And unless it's two ultra up-tempo teams, I almost never bet bad teams over the total. So I just kind of laid off of it from a total standpoint. Did you have anything from a total standpoint?
Yeah, like I said earlier, Drew, for me, the inefficiency of Iona is unlike them, and a reason why I didn't play the total here. Generally speaking, in years past, St. Pete has some matchups historically against – there's more than one up-tempo team in this league over recent history. But Iona's a team that, that has been able to speed it up a little bit against this St. Pete team. And when you're looking at 138.5, it's not that difficult to get to if you're efficient. But for me, Iona just not the same team. They're running up and down, but they're not scoring the way they did in years past. So I didn't even give the total a look here. They're so sporadic, and I think that's the best way to describe this entire conference. It's so sporadic that these games become situational. And for me, there's no real situation here, side or total, that I can play on. There are other games inside the MAC that do present situations, but this is not one of them.
And we're talking with Rob Vino. Follow him on Twitter at Rob Vino Sports. We're going to talk this Saturday slate, guys. We got a huge card, so it's a great day. In my opinion, the best day for sports bettors in the mainstream sports to beat the odds makers, and we'll try to get after it here. 603, 604, 12 p.m. Eastern tip in the Big Ten. Maryland at Michigan. Robbie, we're seeing Ken Palm's numbers putting us at 127 total. That's Michigan 67, Maryland 60. This one in Ann Arbor. How'd you look to bet this Big Ten matchup?
Well, I think both teams coming at it from different angles, right? Michigan off a very disappointing loss to Penn State during the week. Maryland off a huge win against Purdue during the week, that game at home. Now they go to Michigan. I tend to favor the Michigan side in this game just from the coaching perspective here. Not that I have anything against Mark Turgeon, the head coach of Maryland, but I saw the frustration with John Beilein in that post-game conference after they lost to Penn State. And I think if there's one thing coaches love in the middle of the season, in baseball we would refer to these as the dog days. You can kind of correlate this portion of February in college basketball to August in baseball. And the one thing coaches love is something that they can use as a teaching, coaching, motivational type of thing to light a fire under their team to keep them playing hard. And I think Beilein has that in that loss to Penn State. Give Pat Chambers and his crew a lot of credit, because that's a team that could have easily thrown in the towel this season. They have not. They continue to play hard. But Michigan, kind of thought you just roll the balls out and beat Penn State, and that didn't work. I would expect them to play extremely hard here in this game. Not that Maryland won't, but all Maryland's good parts have counterparts on the other side of the floor that can neutralize them. I talk about Bruno Fernando, who's becoming a star for Maryland. We talk about Anthony Cowan, the point guard for Maryland. Michigan has all those pieces, and I think they're a better defensive club. Maryland kind of hangs their hat on defense as well, but I like the Michigan defense. That can be stifling. Their problem, of course, unable to score points at times, but this one's at home. It'll be interesting to see where the number comes in this game, Drew, and that would probably be the likely decider for me. Now, power ratings indicate Michigan should be a 7.5-point favorite here. We'll see where odds makers open this one up, but I do think you'll get a huge bounce-back effort from Michigan. I'd estimate this one, to go somewhere in like that 68-58 type range in favor of the Wolverines. We'll see how it goes, but I like the fact that Beeline has a few days here to light a little fire under his team.
Robbie, we got another one here in the ACC, 6-11, 6-12, high totaled game here, 159 projected at Ken Palm. That's Duke 89, NC State 70. This one is a Duke home game, Cameron Indoor. How would you look to bet this ACC matchup?
Well, I think you have to gauge what's the focus of Duke in this game if you're going to play side, and maybe even if you're going to play total, Drew. Obviously, that comeback the other night took a ton of energy, a ton of effort. I mean, that team was down 69-49, I believe, with like 7 and change left, and came all the way back and wins at the end in pretty thrilling fashion.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into account here. It's not something that can be overlooked in your handicap. Meanwhile, NC State, Kevin Keats, they get a big win the other night, a convincing win, and it was a much-needed win for NC State, which had, been in the midst of a tailspin here. And that Durham, Raleigh, Chapel Hill triangle, the underdog is always gunning for the better team. In NC State's case, they're always the underdog to North Carolina, to Duke. These games are important to them. Kevin Keats' pace, obviously one of the faster tempo teams in the country. We've seen them score as low as 24 points. We've seen them score as high as 100. So, you can generally get them for 75 plus in their contest. I just, I have a hard time playing them if Duke shows, but my gut feeling is that, Duke won't be at 100% with their focus, and that could lead toward an NC State cover here. Now, as for where the line will come out in this game, and my power ratings show Duke should be about a 17-point favorite. That being the case, I would look to take 17 with North Carolina State. I think Coach K's team may look to just win and get out of there, where NC State will be looking for a resume-building win that's real important at this time of year. So I would anticipate a much closer game than 17 points. I don't see why the line would come anything drastically different than that. So for me, it would probably be NC State as the dog here. Their defense is always a concern. Obviously, Duke's ability to have a 2.5, 3-minute spurt is always a concern. But I think in the end, probably too much to ask Duke to win by more than 17 in a game like this off of the victory that they just had over Louisville.
Yeah, spot-wise, it's not an easy one for the Blue Devils. I'm in agreement with you there. From a side standpoint, I would look towards the Wolfpack, Robbie. And we got, 3 more games here, Robbie, we want to hit on Saturday's slate. We got 6-6-7, 6-6-8, Iowa State at Kansas State. Robbie, I like Kansas State here. Ken Palm's numbers putting it as just a 1-point game, 64-63, so that would put us at a 127 total as well. And that's 64 towards Kansas State, so -1. I think that they might jump out and be a little bit more than -1, just being the home team in this spot. But with Dean Wade back, they've won 8 straight Big 12 games, not only winning 8 straight, covering 8 straight. So if you've been betting Kansas State, you've been making some money. How would you look to bet Iowa State, Kansas State here, Robbie?
Yeah, well, it would be different if Ken Palm is correct on where the number will come. I don't see it that way, though. My power ratings show K-State will be a 4.5-point home favorite, which is a completely different animal than Kansas State at home -1.
Yeah.
Especially, you talk about Dean Wade. This is the game that Dean Wade came back in. He had been out injury-wise. I remember Iowa State at home in Ames that Saturday afternoon. I think it was like a noon Eastern start. They were a 9.5-point, 10-point favorite. In fact, I think just before tip-off, when it was pretty clear that Wade was going to make the start, that number tumbled a little bit. Maybe Iowa State went off -9. I can't remember exactly, but it was in that vicinity. And Kansas State came into Ames and just stifled the Iowa State offense. Now, At that point in time, Liddell Wigginton had not really worked himself offensively into the Iowa State rotation. They weren't as cohesive as they are now. I think there were a lot of factors there that were unforeseen at tip-off time that maybe after you watched the game you saw a little more clearly. This is a revenge spot for Iowa State. Iowa State comes off a freakish loss during the week. K-State's on that tremendous roll, as you mentioned. I think they catch a couple of breaks in that role, mainly the fact that Baylor plays without both of their starting guards when they beat Baylor over the course of their last 3 wins. I think it went Kansas, Baylor, and then, of course, their third win during the week here. So for me, it would probably be Iowa State here, Drew. If I get 4.5, I think this game will be tightly contested. Most Kansas State games are low scoring. I think you said Ken Pom has 127 as a projected total.
Yes.
Makes sense. I might even look to play that over because I don't think, in my mind at least, I don't think that Steve Prohm and Iowa State want to get caught in that defensive slugfest that they got caught in at Ames. I think it took them totally by surprise. The K-State defense was phenomenal that day. They've been phenomenal all year, led by Barry Brown. But for me, I think I'd be looking right now, if I can catch 4.5, I'd be looking toward Iowa State. If I see a 127, I don't see any reason why that game can't hit the 130 mark. So for me, it would probably be a look. Right now, at least, as we anticipate the lines coming up in a couple hours, it would be Iowa State and over.
Robbie, so we got over 100 games tomorrow's college basketball card. A lot to go through. No plays on tonight's card for you, I don't see. But tomorrow's card, you're going to have multiple plays up? What time do you try to get those out at?
Drew, I'm going to have those. I'll tell you what. I'm glad you asked because there are 3 plays tomorrow of real significance to me. I tell you what, when I go through the schedule and I have an Excel worksheet for every day's games, and right now I have no less than 47 either side or total things marked as you need to look at this, but 3 in particular, and I'll be deciphering which one I want to use as the 5%er, but I'm going to get it up tonight. Numbers will come early, about 6 o'clock East. I'll have the 5%er up this evening to give it a lot of shelf life, to give the guys a lot of opportunity, to give clients the chance to get a quick number without having to wait till a number gets beaten up till tomorrow. So I really anticipate tomorrow's card. I don't think I've been as excited about a Saturday card the way things have lined up as I am for tomorrow. So a big card for me. Usually on Saturdays it's always a big card for me, but I can guarantee you it'll be a big card tomorrow, highlighted by a 5%er. If I could give out 3, I'd give out 3, but we'll have one 5%er and back it with a bunch of very strong 4% plays tomorrow.
I like it, Robbie. And guys, Robbie's going to have a card tomorrow, likely on Saturday or Sunday as well. Actually, volume-wise, Robbie's a great handicapper, and he's been hot of late as well. 16-4 his last 20s. But we'll do a special coupon code here, Week 49, and you can get Rob Vino's week of service. That includes every sport, but obviously mostly college basketball and NBA when it comes back. But week 49 for the next 7 days, all access for Robbie Vino or myself. You can get Drew Martin or Rob Vino's next week of service. That's next 7 days for just $49 using the coupon code WEEK49. Way less than $10 a day. And that coupon code is WEEK49. Robbie, 731-732 tomorrow night in the SEC, the biggest game on the slate. We got Tennessee, Kentucky. Ken Pom putting it at Kentucky 74, Tennessee 72. So that would make it 146 is the total. Wildcats -2 at home. Do you see the number coming out right about here at -2 with that total? Or and your overall opinion on how you would look to bet the Volunteers versus the Wildcats?
Yeah, this one, my power rating suggests Kentucky should be a 4.5 point favorite. Believe it or not, Drew, as the last 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks have progressed along here in college basketball, Tennessee, in my power ratings at least, has slid out of the top slot in the SEC. Kentucky now I have as the top-rated team, not by much. You can tell by the 4.5 number that a lot of that's attributed to home floor. But Tennessee, for all the accolades they receive, rightfully so. They haven't been doing very well against the number, and I would venture to say, and I don't think this is an out on a limb type of perception here, Tennessee's underachieved over the course of the last 2.5, 3 weeks. I mean, there's some games where they escaped gyms, and I know the SEC has become a grinder. It hadn't been that way for a lot of years, but now you've got such great coaches and you've got so many better teams that, teams do beat each other up inside that league. But Tennessee has gone into places as sizable favorites, run out the door, happy with a victory, and in my estimation, again, underperformed against the expectations. Therefore, Kentucky, which has overperformed against expectations, come on strong over the course of the last 3 weeks, become the 4.5-point favorite here. I think that total, to me, Drew, I would play that total under the number. There's no way, in my mind at least, I think that a game like this, of this magnitude between these two, with their defensive natures, would make it to 146. So if that's the number I see, I'll probably get in quick on some under here with the Tennessee-Kentucky game. Tennessee, the more veteran team, obviously. There's a contrast there when you have Admiral Schofield, Grant Williams and company, Jordan Bone, and all these guys that are veteran players against the young Kentucky team. But Kentucky's showing us lately that they're not really fazed by a lot anymore. And we always point to Ashton Hagans, and he's the kind of the head of the snake on the defensive end. Tennessee, very good defensively as well. So I think you get a slugfest here between these two, to use a baseball term to describe a basketball game. And to me, 146 would be too high. We'll see where they open it. We'll see where the money takes it. But I don't think I'd be alone in that opinion, Drew. Under 146 in a game like this, just don't see, unless everybody's just so red hot that they're scoring baskets over good defense. I think there's too much good defense in this game to be a game that hovers around the 150 mark.
Well, and that happens, and you can, it's, 1 unit bet, whatever it is, on the under, and it could, like you said, they can just be shoot lights out and it goes over. Right. But as far as, like, trying to really handicap this, because I was, in the same boat as you, but Tennessee will run pace at times. They'll go a little up-tempo, and they can put the ball in the basket. They're pretty efficient. They knock down their free throws. They can shoot threes. That's one thing that does worry me, because you bring up Hagan's defense, on-ball defense for Kentucky. I have Kentucky circled as an under team. It's just a matter of if I'm going to get there tomorrow, because Tennessee is a talented team. People make the argument, how good are they? They're very talented, a top 5 team in my opinion, and a lot of that has to do with their offense. So it's a question of, pace-wise, who's going to control it? If Tennessee's going to run up and down like they have at times, there's many games where they have more than 70 possessions, and if this gets up over 70 possessions, you're in danger of this overhitting. So it's a matter of who do you think controls the pace, Robbie?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things to factor in. Will there be jitters? Can you get a 3.5 to 4 minute spot in this game where there's some turnovers, there's missed shots? Normally those 4 minute spurts can take you out of an overplay. They don't always, believe me. We're not general blanket statementing things, but if you play under, this is what you're looking for. And you're looking for the Kentucky strength, which is on the glass, to be able to have Tennessee go one and done on their offensive end. Now, Tennessee, it's a tough team. Like I mentioned before, with Schofield and Williams, they can rebound as well. So the rebounding war will be big in this game if we really want to, sit here and go over X's and O's on how this game might be played. So it is Coach Cal. We'll see. I don't think he hasn't shown that he wants to run with teams. So like you say, it'll be a battle of wills. Who can impose their style on the other? Can the road team come in and impose their will on the other team's floor, or can the home team? I don't think it will go 40 minutes one way or the other, Drew. I think you get spurts both ways over the course of 40 minutes. We'll have some tempo. We're obviously going to have some steals and some fast break baskets, which trigger a quicker style for a couple of minutes, and then we'll have some, if it's a close game, towards the end, we'll have some very, very lengthy possessions where teams try to get off good shots. It's a great game. You can argue both ways legitimately argue both ways, side and total here. And Tennessee, just to make things clear, because I know I said that they've fallen to second place in my SEC power ratings, but to make things real clear on Tennessee, my opinion of them is that they play to the level of their competition. It's a team that beat Gonzaga. So you'd expect Tennessee, they're going to show up here. Whether or not they've been below expectations the last 3 weeks against lesser teams doesn't really mean a hill of beans in this game. It just matters where the line comes out, because power ratings get adjusted and the number thus gets adjusted. But Tennessee, to me, is a team that has played to the level of its competition, capable of winning the national championship, capable of going to Alabama and escaping that gym. So I think they'll come to play. This is a much anticipated game. We'll see how it goes.
Robbie, we got one more game we'll hit real quick to close out the card. 7-4-1, 7-4-2, Mississippi State at Arkansas. Ken Palm showing at 75 for the Razorbacks. 75 for the Bulldogs, 73 for the Razorbacks. This one in Fayetteville. How would you look to bet this SEC matchup?
You know, Arkansas at home, Drew, has become an under cash cow. Just play them at home in Fayetteville, in Bud Walton Arena, play it under, and win money and go on to the next game. Maybe that's the way it goes again, but this game, even more than the last game we talked about, is a case where the visitor can force tempo. Mississippi State's been an over team or a higher scoring team and a little loose defensively. So their games have been higher scoring. Be very interested to see where this number comes. Ken Palm's projecting 148, but Arkansas has been an under cash cow at home. And I picked this game just because I want to see where Ben Howland's team goes from here. We've said it before. I'll say it one more time. Heading into the season, the expectation's huge for this MSU team. The amount of returning guys that they had off of last year's really good team, and they haven't really performed the way in a straight-up one-loss record that many people thought. But they had a couple of tough losses at home. They just finished a 3-game homestand where they had a couple of really, really tough losses to SEC power teams, and then they bounced back the other night. I happened to have a -5.5 against Alabama because I thought they'd bounce back, and they go wire to wire in that game. Is that a signal that they're now going to bully teams that they should bully in the league and get those wins back, those straight-up wins back to impress the committee? They're in good shape in the net ratings, but they do need wins. They can't afford a loss like this. So for me, I think this is just it's a difficult game to go in there and beat Arkansas. Can Mississippi State turn the corner and start winning games, or are they just going to fall back into the trap that they were in before and pile up SEC losses? It's a great question here. I don't know which way to go with it, to tell you the truth. My power ratings make Mississippi State -2. I kind of believe in that team. I believe in Ben Howland, but Gafford and company at home, very, very difficult. If forced to play it, I'd probably play Mississippi State. If forced to play total, I think I'd go under 148.
Robbie, great stuff as always for the Saturday college basketball card. Guys, we got the coupon code WEEK49 at checkout. That's WEEK49 for Robbie Vino or myself, Drew Martin's next 7 days of service for just $49. So check that out at sportsmemo.com. Robbie hitting 14-6 his last 20 basketball releases. It's going to be a huge card tomorrow, guys. Check it out, sportsmemo.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you on Monday.